This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by GlobalSpeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of GlobalSpeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. Calvin, welcome to Tech Talk.
Frank, thank you for having me today.
Rainbow Push Atlanta. I'm sure some of our listeners are well aware of it, but I'll bet you many of them are not. So maybe go into a little bit about what that's all about.
Rainbow Push Atlanta. I am the relatively new executive director of Rainbow Push Citizenship Education Fund Peachtree Street Project. Rainbow Push was founded by Reverend Jesse Jackson. And after he had been appointed 50 years ago to head up Operation Breadbasket in Chicago in 1966. Shortly after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, I guess in 1971, he established Operation Push, People United to Save Humanity. And at that point, he began doing work and continuing the work that he had been appointed to do around economic equity. And that work has come to evolution with the Wall Street Project that some people may be familiar with, where he advocates for inclusion on Wall Street for employment as well as business opportunities for entrepreneurs. And he also, most recently, has been advocating for inclusion in Silicon Valley and in the tech industry.
I think obviously that he stays right on point and where things are needed the most, and that's certainly where the opportunity lies as far as the new generation, next generation is over the next few decades in the dynamic digital economy that we're dealing with today, certainly the millenniums and all of the discussions that center around that. Cal, let's talk a little bit about the conference that you guys have got coming up, this Creating Opportunity Conference. Talk a little bit about that.
I'll be glad to, Frank. This year we're having our 17th annual Creating Opportunity Conference. We're doing something a little bit different this year in that we're going to begin our conference this year at Morehouse College. We'll have a whole day at Morehouse, and the morning and that day will be a tech-related day. In the morning, we're going to begin with a panel on creating a tech ecosystem. And I begin with the premise and the predicate, laying the predicate that Atlanta is the portal for inclusion in the innovation economy. That it will happen in many places, but it must happen here if it will be sustainable and have long-term impact. My region is from Virginia around to Texas, and in that region, for example, we have most of the historically black colleges and universities, most of the PhDs in the STEM fields for minorities, African Americans in particular, will come from the region, either from the undergraduates or graduate ranks, and this is where population is. Population is growing in the region. Atlanta is considered the capital of the region, and is a location of choice, of preference for the best and the brightest. So I believe that Atlanta will continue to be a place that has the greatest potential for long-term sustained impact, people entering to diversify the innovation economy.
Love the way when you use the term. I'm sure that it's not one I'm familiar with, but I like the portal concept, and I think you mentioned the portal to the innovation economy. That certainly really describes it in such a strong and unique and entertaining way. I think most of us really get it and either live it, or in the case of younger people who are getting involved, could be attracted to that kind of description. Let's talk a little bit now about. I guess is it part of the conference, and that is your think tank competition?
Yes, yes. Let me go through briefly what the first day looks like.
Yeah, okay.
And that's the day of interest, I think, for many of your listeners and your subscribers, your audience, which I think is just a growing body of people that are going to change the face of how wealth is created going forward. And the theme of our conference this year is converting opportunity to wealth in our communities. And on that note, we begin with a discussion about the ecosystem, because in order, and I have a theory. I have a theory about money. Money travels the globe 365, 24/7, looking for a good idea. And all wealth is based on divine ideas, okay? It will accrue to a well-packaged idea. It will accrue to a well-packaged bad idea, but it's looking for a good idea. So our challenge with Atlanta is to package and position Atlanta properly as that good idea that attracts capital. And I think that if we create the ecosystem that nurtures the creativity that we attract here in Atlanta, and we package it properly, that we can get the necessary capital to spur the type of growth that will really make a difference, not just in this region, but in this United States of America and around the globe. And I think it's easier to do that than it is to export our talent into other cultures that may be less friendly. Okay, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it, Frank.
Well, I tell you what, though, it's inspiring because it hits it out of the ballpark. I mean, Calvin, you're right on, and needless to say, you wouldn't be the director of what you're doing if you didn't live it and understand it and have the passion to implement the kind of things that you're talking about. But it's absolutely the right time, the right place, and certainly the approach that you guys are talking about is just powerhouse. I mean, it's really very, very impressive. Now, you mentioned, and as you were talking, I'm thinking in the back of I'm hearing the song, "Money Makes the World Go Round," But that said, let's talk a little bit about prizes for the winners. What's involved with that as far as the competition is concerned?
Sure. What we'll do is we'll talk about the ecosystem, and then we talk about the digital, the trend in digital entertainment. Most people are consuming content, especially entertainment content, on their mobile devices these days. So we're going to talk about where the opportunity lies in that trend. We also then are going to transition to lunch, where we're going to be talking about piercing the capital veil. A number of entrepreneurs have gotten some angel investment. They may have been successful in pitch competitions, but they're hitting a ceiling. And we're going to have a discussion about breaking through that ceiling and piercing that capital veil from people who have done it. We're actually working on a guest appearance via Skype from the West Coast, from an individual who has done a major $600 million deal as of recent, but I'm not at liberty to say who it is at this point. But we're going to have that discussion. Then we're going to honor Lonnie Johnson, the developer and the inventor of the Super Soaker, and we're going to give him some recognition. And then we transition in the afternoon to the pitch competition. And the pitch competition this year will be giving away $5,000 in prizes.
First, I've had the pleasure and the honor to know Lonnie and to be actually to visit him at his operation in Atlanta, and so much more going on than obviously the overwhelming success of the Super Soaker, but the other side of it, the things that he's doing and pushing the envelope in terms of batteries and the other stuff that he's evolved in, and the outreach that he has in robotics. I think some of the things that he's involved in are so good and so strong and so important, and I think as you're kind of inferring, he doesn't really get the kind of recognition that he really should. I certainly would love to see the day when potentially he's inducted into what we call the Georgia Technology Hall of Fame, because I think he really represents not only innovation, but a concept that doesn't really get enough attention, and that's inventors. And I think there's a subtle but a major difference in terms of innovation versus invention, and certainly Lonnie represents such a quality individual, but a strong creative and an incredible representative for the city and for the state of Georgia and beyond, really. Okay, so let's talk about another aspect to it, but certainly all of our listeners are interested in the challenge of seeking funding. Maybe go into some of the other opportunities that are available for people that are looking for money.
Yes, excellent question, Frank. You're spot on. One of the things we're going to talk about is the continuum of capital. In other words, everything from friends, family, and fools around, some say, to angel investment, to seed, early stage, venture capital, private equity, strategic investment, and then a public exit, and all of those things. And we're going to ask the entrepreneurs in the room to determine, based on where they are, what is the appropriate capital for you, okay? And we will have in the audience people representing the whole spectrum, okay? And we, at our lunch and throughout the day, there'll be opportunities to network and meet these people who have been where they are, and some who are looking for those fresh ideas and those young entrepreneurs and those startup opportunities to make some investments in. So we'll have some angels involved that will be there. We'll have other consultants and service providers to help people get themselves prepared to be presented to capital sources. And we will actually have some capital sources in the room. We have a success story from last year. Last year, our second place winner in our pitch competition, who was a Georgia Tech student, a female, and an athlete, she came in second place, and we had what we call a deal room reception afterwards and the winners were introduced to a gentleman named Sig Mosley. And Sig Mosley, as you know, he's considered the godfather of early stage investing in the Southeast.
Yeah, I know. Yes, and absolutely.
Yeah. Sig and this young lady.
And I'm Italian, so I know godfathers.
You know.
No, I know Sid. He's incredible.
And they met each other. They stayed in touch. And Sig ended up investing $50,000 of his own money in her company and introduced her to several other investors. Okay, and it's the first person like her that Sig has ever invested in. He invested his own personal money, so we're very proud of what comes out of our pitch competition.
Truly, that's really huge. I mean, one of the inside jokes is that Sid gives out T-shirts that says that I went to see Sid for money and all I got was his T-shirt. So he's not necessarily someone that bets on every chip on the table. But he's been incredibly successful and highly intuitive in terms of not just getting involved in startup situations, but getting involved in situations that end up becoming literally the leaders of entire industries, internet security systems. If you go back far enough, there were a couple of young guys that were basically broke and had used all the money they could on their credit cards and came to see Sig, and he was there early in that game, and obviously it turned out to be a huge success for those individuals, but equally we're one of the pioneers as far as the internet security technology industry is concerned. Well, we're quickly running out of time. Obviously, you're right up on a deadline. I think you've got a deadline even coming up today as far as getting some of the nominations in. If you will, give us a little insight as to what the listeners need to do to find out more information, and if there's still time for them to get involved in the actual process.
Okay, there is still time up until midnight on Tuesday. I invite you to the interested parties out there, interested in the conference, interested in the pitch competition, to go to RainbowPushAtlanta.org, RainbowPushAtlanta.org. Again, anyone interested in the conference or interested in the pitch competition, which you'll have until midnight on Tuesday, that's tomorrow night, go to RainbowPushAtlanta.org.
Calvin, can't thank you enough for congratulations on the new position. Exciting things that you guys are involved in. Extremely important for so many reasons, but I know you're very busy with what you got going on, but thank you so much for taking a few minutes out of what I know is an extremely busy schedule to tell us a little bit about what's going on at Push Atlanta and for joining us today on Tech Talk.
Thank you so much, Frank. I appreciate your invitation.